Thanks for joining us today. Just a reminder that we love questions from the audience, so you can start commenting your questions now, or you can also add them as we go. I'll be right back on to welcome our guests to the show. Thanks for meeting us for coffee. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for being patient. We had a couple technical difficulties we're working through this morning, but I appreciate you guys all joining me. I think this is episode 47, 48. I don't know, actually. We'll find out. Episode 48. There we go. I see it. So thank you guys for being here today. I have known Elizabeth now for over a year because we met at a conference, and we met at JOC Inland Distribution Conference. And I wanted to bring that up this morning because it's coming up. It's time to start thinking about fall conferences. And so I was asking, hey, let's start sharing the discount code and the link. But what I realized is even with my discount code, which starts in a couple weeks, there will never be a cheaper rate than there is right now. So the early bird rate is actually the cheapest. When it goes up, we'll have a discount code we'll get to you guys. But obviously, the early bird gets the worm here. So if you guys are looking ahead at conferences, this would be a great time to check out registration for JOC Inland Distribution. It's in Chicago, which is fitting. That's why I met Elizabeth, because she's also in Chicago. I'm going to go ahead and bring her on this morning. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, and thank you very much also for the opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. So we met at JOC Inland, and I would love to ask you real quickly what your thoughts are on the conference, if people are considering it, as far as is it a good conference to attend for a transportation provider, and just kind of share any thoughts you have on the conference.
Yes, I think it's very recommendable to go and attend. Any conference provides a great opportunity and space for networking connections like you and I met, as well as many others. The JOC conference specifically brings in so many forwarders, brokers, shippers, industry experts. And so it just, that whole mix ends up providing a great space for us to be able to all share learnings, share experiences, and also fortify connections. So potentially sending a lot of emails back and forth with individuals that might be in other parts of the world, country, regions, and being able to have one space where we can all connect is really nice.
Yeah. And Chicago is so easy to get to if you're not from Chicago. So, speaking of which, if anyone's listening today and you are in Chicago, let us know. We'd love to hear that in the comments. See who from the Midwest is listening in. If you're not in Chicago, that's okay. We're still glad you're here. Let us know where you're listening from today. Happy to say hi to anyone. As always, I'm in Kansas City. So, any Kansas City people listening, let me know as well. Well, just quick rundown. We're going to get more information out on conferences because they are coming up soon. Discount codes are going to start coming out. But I, as of right now, am planning on attending DATCon in September, Inland Distribution in September, Trimble in November, and Technovations in November, and then already looking ahead to Manifest, which is crazy, and in February of next year. If anything else comes up, I'll let you guys know. Elizabeth, for anyone who didn't get to meet you at JOC Inland like I did, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit better and telling us more about who you are and who Moscoso Express is as well?
Yes, Moscoso Express is a trucking company right outside of the O'Hare area. We are in the Elk Grove region, and for 21 years, we've been providing first and final mile solutions around the O'Hare Airport and the necessary manufacturing and industry that's around here as well. So not only do we provide local support, we also provide regional support. So that takes us out to Wisconsin, the Indianas, the Detroit's, Michigans, and Ohio's the region. So Iowa, Kentucky.
Yeah. And how long have you been in the trucking industry, Elizabeth?
It has been for 21 years exactly, if not even more. But taking lead has been much more for the last 10 years, really trying to make sure that we fortify our operations as well as build a lot of relationships with our clients and go beyond that, making sure that we now look at these partnerships for the long haul for many years to come.
Awesome. Well, good morning to Los Angeles. And we have someone from Chicago listening in as well. So thanks for being here, guys. Thanks for being here a little earlier than the rest of us, Los Angeles. We appreciate that. I want to go ahead and I felt like it was time to have an asset provider back on the show. It's been a while. We talk a lot to economists, talk a lot to educators, and a lot to brokers and other different types of providers as well. Technology companies have come on. It's been a while since I talked to an asset provider, but there's been a lot going on, a lot of changing policy, and just a lot of developments in the macroeconomy as well that I just think it's time to hear from someone who represents the carrier side as to how all of these developments have been impacting you guys. So looking forward to diving into a list of topics I went ahead and thought through and I was like, yeah, I'd like to ask her about these. So lots of questions for you today. But I'd love to start if you could just kind of give us a lay of the land for Chicago right now, as so that we can kind of tailor this conversation to the areas that you are involved in actively. So I'd like to know what industries you guys are currently serving, the mode types that you're involved in within the Chicago and broader Midwest markets. And then I think I have some questions based on and what you give me there.
Nice, nice. Well, we end up serving the freight forwarder. So what that primarily looks like is anything that is coming in and out of the airport. And that primarily consists of manufacturing facilities, so automotive sectors, aerospace sectors. Then we also have convention centers. As you're mentioning a lot of conferences that you're going to be going to, we end up helping make sure that all of the props, the displays, everything gets there right on time. That's the key aspect. And then also the government sector, tech sector is very important, especially with everything that's going on and these conversations that are going on right now too. So those are the primary sectors that we end up supporting in industries.
Yeah, I love that. I just feel like it's so diverse. Obviously, Chicago is such a big freight hub, and such a central distribution point too, that you get a little bit of everything going on in Chicago. And as far as mode types go, you guys are operating. Uh, do you play in the cross dock, warehousing, intermodal, drayage, over the road? Kind of what does your mix look like?
Nice. We have straight trucks and tractor trailers. Some of our straight trucks have lift gates, which make them great for hospital delivery, construction site deliveries. And we end up having our range that goes out for the FTL, so full truckload EUV, exclusive use vehicles that end up bringing us out to the regional areas, as well as downtown Chicago deliveries, things of that nature.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. So I'd like to ask you just in general over the last year, this was really the last 12 months, I think we were hoping would look different than they have. We've been in a few years now of a more of a what they call a shipper market or a down market. And I think there was a lot of hope that this year was going to be different. And it still might be. We don't know yet, but the uncertainty has really been kind of clouding that outlook. But so far this year, and even maybe the end of last year, have you noticed anything across these different industry verticals that you guys are operating in, or specifically within the Chicago market? Have you seemed to notice any impacts to any specific industries or sectors?
I think we're seeing the standard cyclical nature. So we end up having peaks at the end of the quarters, peaks at the end of the year, and then we also have a little bit of a slowdown in February. So those standard cyclical markets are still going on, and that's been in our industry, not surprising. I think we are also seeing a little bit of differences in terms of the tariff discussions and how that's impacting just the overall confidence around what is to come and how much we're going to have to be charged in rates. And so we ended up seeing a surge in January that was very nice, of course, from a operational standpoint. But that surge, then we ended up seeing again another surge at the end of the quarter of March. And April is turning out to be a little bit slower, but not in a negative way. I think there's just so much going on that we're looking at things and we're trying to be as supportive as we can, because there's a lot of discussion as we see on the news. There's a lot of discussion around what we do, right? In and out of the airport is
Mm.
import and exports of freight. And so therefore, everything that's kind of in the news right now that's being discussed about is impacting that type of commodity, that type of cargo that's going in. And there's a lot of questions that we have to kind of start better understanding. And because everything is new and fresh, there's going to be unknowns, there's going to be questions. And it's been an interesting time.
Yeah. And so I think you mentioned, you saw the volumes at the in January, kind of end of year in January, which were both normal seasonality, I think had a little bit of play, but also some pull forwards after we knew the results of the election and the stance on tariffs that was likely to be taken. And then we saw again, you mentioned that bump kind of trying to get stuff in again before end of quarter, but also that early April tariff deadline that went into effect. And so now I think we're kind of trying to figure out again where we go from here. I'm curious. I don't know how much of an insight you may have into this, but did you notice any specific like commodity types or sectors that seem to be doing more air cargo? Because I can't imagine that everyone who brings in imports has important enough inventory to want to pay for last minute air cargo coming in.
Definitely. We ended up seeing the surges in the tech space, especially in January. So I think tech was very forward thinking in that regard. And we also ended up seeing a lot of the automotive sector start pulling in. They typically have a spike at the end of the quarter, but it was definitely a spike for sure this time before end of March. So potentially, for example, if a lane that we support ends up going maybe once a week on a standard basis, all of a sudden we're seeing 3 to 4 times a week. So it was very noticeable slight changes that we had for a shorter period of time. And it was good, it was helpful. And the most important thing is that we remain flexible, adaptable, and understand the market and want to continue supporting.
Yeah. Have you heard any indication on if now that we've had this kind of pull forward a couple different times, if we could expect maybe to see lower volumes than normal, at least now for the next month or two? Did they, bring in enough that they're not going to continue normal buying patterns for a period of time?
While I don't have that specific answer, what I can say is that what we are hearing from our freight forwarder clients is that their shippers, as well as when speaking with shippers and also reading the news, we are not hearing and seeing that individuals, because of the tariff discussion, could be putting their incoming planned orders on pause to better understand what is the true implication, what are the true costs. Now, Moscoso Express, our team is a customs bonded carrier. So when things come into the country, we would be able to transport it. We don't have to have the tariffs be paid that very second. So while that can be beneficial, of course, just how we've been talking about January, March, these months, we've already been building inventory. So it might not be as beneficial in this moment, but still a nice plus to have, especially given all these questions that are in the space.
Sure. I have a client and they are in the warehousing space and they mentioned that there were a lot of people looking for all of a sudden for bonded warehousing options. And it doesn't seem that many people actually like officially moved or pulled the trigger on that. But if you know, could you kind of explain to some of us who don't play in this space as often what the at least thought process was behind bonded transportation or bonded warehousing when all of this came about?
Yeah, so it's very important to pay the tariffs, go through customs documentation, things of that nature. And we end up having, whenever freight comes in, we have to make sure that our freight forwarders have processed all of that documentation so that we can, and so that us and anyone can go and pull the merchandise. You could pull the cargo from the warehouses. So now it's leaving a customs bonded facility, which would be within the airport space, you could say. But
Yeah.
once it starts exiting that and now it's going into another warehouse, there are tariffs that have to get paid, one thing, and then in addition to a lot of other documentation. And so with these tariffs being questioned and being raised, now we have to put a pause. We have to let people slow down, understand how much do we truly have to pay given these changes. And what I've heard, but not direct, because we don't do the customs brokerage documentation by all means. But what I have heard though is that the website requires some time and space and patience, especially when making changes, so that way everyone can receive it. The formulas can get updated, things of that nature. And
Mm.
with instant changes being made, we have to just give it time to adjust. So being a customs bonded carrier, however, we could go to the warehouses where it is still not passed through customs yet, transfer it to another warehouse where it will reside until it passes through all of those documents and the necessary check marks.
Yeah. So essentially, if you had freight and you in a customs bonded warehouse when it got into, port or your inland rail hub or whatever that it might be, and then they used a provider, in this case, like Moscoso, who was also bonded, you transported it via bonded carrier into another bonded warehouse, you're essentially just allowing yourself more time to delay the actual payments of those tariffs and duties, correct?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. That makes more sense. I understand kind of the scramble there. I what I don't know, and if maybe you know, maybe not, is if they were to do that and let it sit in a bonded warehouse, and then let's say tariffs are adjusted and they're lowered, when they move them out of there, do they pay the lower tariffs or do they pay the tariff price that was on record when it was originally brought into the country?
That one I do not know.
That's a $1 million question right there. If anyone in our comments is all up in this space right now, let us know. I kind of have to think that maybe the answer to that would be yes, they get a break, and that's why they were all kind of scrambling to consider more bonded space. Um, okay, so obviously there's a lot going on right now geopolitically and with tariff discussions. I kind of want to move past that for a minute and also talk about something else that's been brought up from the current administration, and that would be uh, their stance on environmental impacts kind of as a whole, but specifically transport topics published an article not long ago that said that the Trump administration has already made mention of potentially altering or even doing away with the new restrictions that were set to go in place on tractor trailer units in 2027, which we're only 2 years away from. So people are probably already planning equipment and thinking about equipment. And I also know that the manufacturers have already started manufacturing equipment according to these new specs to be compliant. but now that might be changing. So can you kind of walk me through maybe the thought process when it comes to how have carriers been thinking and preparing for these new standards? And do any potential changes to those standards now change the way carriers are thinking about equipment in the next couple of years?
Yeah. I think we can leverage heavily on the 2007 EPA mandate that also came out and just learn from those historicals and see how it could potentially play out. So, what we have to make sure that we do is with our current existing equipment, keep it running. Whenever there are new changes, there will be new unknowns. And so that's also what we saw in 2007 when the EPA mandate came out for emissions and emissions control. So we're now seeing a transition again towards a more sustainable world, which is great. We've been working on that since 2019 as well. So very forward thinking in that regard with biodiesel, idling limitations, working with our drivers, because we definitely want to be on the forefront of it. However, we also have to see the overall infrastructure and what that means. So there's a big push on hydrogen, EV, all of these very neat attributes. And it's great to see that it's pushing the momentum towards a more sustainable world. However, as mentioned, similar to what we saw in 2007, we ended up getting pieces of equipment that came out, and potentially there were a lot of unknowns about how sensitive the sensors had to be, and all of a sudden having to go to the shop for quite a few times. So with all that being said, I suspect that if it does go forward, if we keep it, we have to go through that learning curve again, just together as a whole industry, understand that there's going to be a lot of new sensors. The maintenance crews that have to work on these units are also going to have to come up to speed on what are the best ways to address these. Now we're talking about computers too. So software updates and things of that nature that didn't exist back in the day when we
Yeah.
were just machine and just wrenches and things of that nature. So there's a lot of opportunity out there to find out a little bit more. And what we can also suspect is maybe the plans, if we were to not proceed with this mandate, the plans of purchasing equipment, maybe we were going to make a few large purchases of quantities of units so that way we can be before the mandate goes into effect. And that's again what we ended up seeing last time. So that way we have equipment that was already purchased before all of this new technology comes about. Maybe we're going to be reassessing what assets we're going to be purchasing here in these next
Sure.
few years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think deciding where, your capital is going to be spent in the next couple of years would be different if these emissions were repealed. You might choose to put it in, still new equipment, but still maybe used, but newer, but not these, brand new units that are being made to meet all these future specs and requirements, as well as trailers. Maybe some people were like, man, we need to update the fleet, the tractors, but we really would like to get some new trailers as well, or whatever that might be. They might just choose to, they'd have more flexibility, I guess, is what I would think with that. Interestingly, I think that production this year has been cut already for trailers and tractors and is already underperforming expectations. So I think in my mind, that might be some proof of hesitation to do anything. One, uncertain market in general, but two, a hesitation to decide what type of equipment to purchase when we don't have clarity yet on the mandates that will or won't be changed. So that would be understandable.
Yeah, especially with
Thank
that mandate coming out during an election year and knowing that the tables could turn. So it really
Yeah.
makes us just be ready, plan ahead, consider things, but definitely let's not take any action quite yet.
Yeah. Okay, Oscar had our back this morning, and I think he's saying we're right, if I read that correctly. Oscar, I think you're saying we're
Withdraw,
right, because he's
yeah.
saying it's the date of withdrawal from the facility for the bonded facilities. Otherwise, I'm reading that as if it wasn't a bonded facility. It's the date it's admitted into the facility. So I think our hunch
Whenever
there
it's
is
out
right.
of the warehouse, that's the rate. So thank you very much, Oscar. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
for being here, Oscar. We appreciate you. Okay, and something else that I've actually talked about twice now on this podcast, but with brokers or more like providers themselves, was the changing landscape in insurance and just legal risk in general. And we talked a
Mhm.
lot about this for brokers and where's their responsibility lie and kind of what are the trends in insurance. But I'm curious to get a asset provider's perspective on this as well. What have you kind of observed when it comes to insurance for your fleet over the last several years?
We're seeing just the natural. It, if you go to the grocery store and you've noticed prices go up, we're seeing it also on the insurance side. We'll put it that way. We are seeing that we can be very great carriers, have great relationships. Prices are just going to continue rising, and that's just the fact of the matter. And what we've done is proactively know that and go into these annual renewals with that in mind, and just trying to get a very collaborative discussion going on with our insurance agent. What can we do as a carrier? Let's assess, are there deductible things that we can modify our assets? Which ones are potentially the ones that are spiking up the costs? Do we have to look into that? And again, going back to that discussion that we just left from, what assets should we be buying? Do we have to? All of those things impact the insurance rates that we have. And so therefore, just trying to be smart about it, trying to be working in a collaborative space to make sure that we make the right decisions that will help us maintain our expenses. And if we're lucky, lower them a little bit.
Yes. I actually, so this just reminded me of something, and I'll put it out there for anyone listening. There is a webinar coming up soon. It has people from it's like the California Highway Patrol, along with some government liaisons from TIA who are joining. But I'm going to put the link to that in the comments of this podcast after this. So I'll get that out there for you guys. My good friend, Danielle reminded me of that, so I will put that out there. But I think that I bring that up because cargo theft has made like mainstream media, right? Especially around the pandemic when, there's a lot more desperation and we had so much congestion and things were sitting for so long on rails and all of that. And so cargo theft kind of spiked. And then I just feel like in general in 2020 into 2021, there was just so much negative attention around transportation and cargo liability, theft, and then fraud, of course. The fraud has been increasing. And I think all of this is impacting, obviously, the cost to insure things. And I know I just tried to reshop my mortgage insurance, and I was like, nope, I'm not changing anything because everything was coming back insanely inflated from when, the last few years. And that's because we've seen changes in the broader market. We've seen changes in home values. And so what I would like to know though is, how are trucking companies trying to control costs and kind of strike this balance? Because your costs to operate have been increasing in the same few years that the market has been decelerating when it comes to rates. And so, how have you guys been kind of navigating, increasing costs with decreasing freight rates?
Very important to understand historically. Historically, these cycles exist, and we just have to be aware that right now it may appear that we're going on a downhill, but remember that it is going to be turning. It's just a matter of when. It's not if. It won't always stay in this trajectory, but it will turn here. And so, with all that being said, because we've been in business for 21 years, we've seen a few cycles at this point. And so to really understand the bottom line, what moves your business, what are lanes that potentially you have to reconsider or renegotiate, so that way we all stay sustainable and healthy. At the end of the day, we've been here for 21 years. We want to be here for many more to come. And so therefore, it's again going back to those partnerships. So insurance is one of the large expenses, you could say. And so making sure that we read the fine print, understand, okay, are my miles correct? Are my driver's experience correctly notated? Speaking with the underwriter, trying to get a better understanding of what exactly is moving this dollar value. What is impacting it? What are the significant ones? What are the potentially what appear not significant, but when you start adding them up, they start adding to something. Relying on, for example, another big item for trucking companies is our maintenance. Making
Yeah.
sure that we speak with our maintenance shop, see what we can do proactively, preventatively, so that way we avoid these hefty costs. So it's all about understanding your what moves your business. So yes, operationally, have great operations. That's the baseline. We also have to be very good and friendly with our accountants, make sure that we better understand what is that bottom line and what are our big expenses, make sure that we run efficiently. And as a whole company, making sure that our drivers are also part of that discussion, our dispatch team, making sure that everyone looks at things and says, hey, we have to run efficiently, and this is what efficiency looks like. These are examples. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Congratulations on 21 years. That's such a testament to you and your family and all of the work that your team members have done. I think that the unfortunate reality for a lot of people, we had so many entrants to the market in 2020 and 2021, and it's hard to get good at operating really efficiently and checking every penny when it's absolute chaos around you and the money is plentiful. So I
Mhm.
think, and also the unfortunate reality is that a lot of those people entered at a great freight market cycle, but equipment was at a premium, and other
Mhm.
things were at a premium to obtain. So really high cost to enter, and then a high cost to continue to maintain that entrance into a very changing market. So I think anyone who's been around for over 20 years is a wealth of information for a newer provider who is maybe going through their first or second market cycle right now. So if anyone's listening, would highly recommend that you get in touch with Elizabeth or her team on that note. Okay, let's see. I think that's been most of my questions. I think the last one I want to put out there, I've tried not to talk about this one too much because I'm not a huge fan of it and I don't really want to give it too much like airtime, if you will. But I would like to just know maybe, succinctly your thoughts on the Broker Transparency Act. And yeah, I'm just going to leave it that open. What are your thoughts on the Broker Transparency Act, Elizabeth?
Well, we are an asset-based carrier, so that means that we don't have any a brokerage division or anything like that. So on our side, I would say transparency overall helps, and we hear that from our clients all the time. Everyone wants transparency around freight. Where's the freight? Where's the cargo? What time? What's the exact down to the minute? And so we provide a lot of that, and we try to do our very best to be as transparent as we can with our clients, as proactive with communication, things of that nature. So in a way, we have GPS trackers on our trucks, on our freight that we carry as well, sometimes depending on the type of cargo, talking about cargo security. So now we're in a way giving potential transparency to pricing and what that negotiation could look like. So I am all about making sure that everyone runs a business. And what does it mean to run a business? We have to have some type of profit. So by no means is it to not provide any benefits. And especially some of these charges that we're also receiving require that. So we're talking about all these tariffs, all these discussions, these changes. Someone has to do the work. Someone has to be doing the paper, the emails, the time that all of that does take. So everyone needs to be paid fairly, is what I would end up saying. And what does that look like at the end of the day? I am not going to be one that can determine that. However, I think
Yeah.
it'll present us with a great opportunity to have more discussions if it does move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity for everyone to at least address and recognize the fact that everyone just wants to know that they can trust their partners and that they can find good partners to work with. So I think at a minimum we could say that, right? Like everyone agrees generally that transparency, at least trust in a business relationship is good. I think the extent to which actual, balance sheets need to be opened and shared or things like that is obviously something that has caused a lot of contention. But I like your point that there's a lot of information we're already sharing and a lot that should be communicated openly and honestly between partnerships. And so hopefully we at least all agree with that and can continue to do so. Well, is there, as we kind of look forward now, we made it through Q1. So as we look into Q2, what would you say the focus is at Moscoso for Q2 as far as anything that you guys might be anticipating or just preparing for, or is it kind of business as usual? What are the thoughts as we move into the second quarter?
Yeah, we're kind of towards the latter end of the RFQ season. So just trying to make sure that we really hone in on those lanes, the opportunities, really make sure that we fortify our relationships with all of these discussions and pause shipments. We will eventually have the shipments start coming back in, if not already. And so therefore we have to make sure that we support those surges and those changes. So our Q2 is going to be filled with relationships, making sure that we prepare. Few upcoming certifications that are in the works. So Moscoso Express will be able to provide even more services. So there's quite a bit that's coming up. Looking forward to sharing all that as it comes out.
Yeah, that's awesome. This has been quite an interesting time. RFP season was like wrapping up. We were going into awards and starts right when all this madness has also been happening. So I have to imagine that's caused delays and stalls and irregular volumes in the start of new RFP awards. And uh, probably a lot of shippers having to say, it's not always going to be like this. We promise it's not going to be like this the whole year. So probably a little bit of extra patience and flexibility is in order right now and even through the next quarter on all fronts from all sides. Elizabeth, if anyone would like to talk to you more, you are on LinkedIn, correct? So they could connect with you there, send you a message.
Correct. LinkedIn, we have our Instagram, we have emails, we have our phone lines. By all means, it's all under the same Moscoso Express. And our website has all of our type of services, what type of industries we service, things of that nature.
Awesome. Much for being here today. I am glad that you were able to join and kind of give us a little bit of a lay of the land in Chicago and the surrounding areas. And I also learned something new today about bonded warehousing and transportation and how all of that works. It's there and a little help from Oscar as well. And appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
All right. And thanks everyone who listened in today. It was great to hear you guys, see some of you in the comments. If you listen back to this after the live show, because it's going to be available on LinkedIn, you can go ahead and still ask your questions in the comments. It'd just be helpful if you tag myself or tag Elizabeth directly in the question so that we can come back and see that. We'll be happy to get back to that after the show is over. Thank you everyone for being here and for meeting us for coffee today.